Affirmative action. Love it or hate it, it's a part of your everyday life and is the reason that not every boss is a white male. According to the Cornell Law School's Legal Information Institute, the definition of affirmative action is a set of procedures designed to eliminate unlawful discrimination among applicants. It's the reason a lot of our school and employment documents make sure to mention that they don't discriminate based on sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, race, color, religion, disability, and in some cases, age. Some people believe that it's unnecessary in society and that it puts an undue burden on the process of hiring or promotion or allowing people into a certain institution for education. Some people believe that it's necessary to correct decades of prior discrimination and lack of access to opportunities. And today I will be discussing the controversy of affirmative action in education and whether it benefits or hinders our society. Let's start with the pros. Affirmative action corrects imbalances. Discrimination is not easily solved, and according to Becoming Less Separate, the executive summary and introductions from the Civil Rights Commission, affirmative action has no negative effect on school integration and has actually increased the amount of schools deemed racially diverse despite factors that tend to cause racial imbalance, such as which state a school is in. The purpose of affirmative action is to account for people who might otherwise be overlooked. According to Susan Donarski, a professor of education, public policy, and economics at the University of Michigan, this is an important reason that affirmative action is based on helping minorities, women, and people with disabilities find their own place in the workforce and in education. Looking at these factors, this is actually the best way to implement it, according to her. For example, if we did affirmative action based on something more broad like income, that would not reflect the ideal diverse setting because in reality, according to the U.S. Census, the dominant race is white at 76%. In second place are black for 13%, followed by Asians at 6%. How that breaks down in practice is that there is a significant amount of low-income whites than there are other minorities combined. Therefore, they would make up the majority of the admissions if they were going to be based on economics alone. Seeing as how this rights all the wrongs, it seems, there is, however, a flip side to this, and an argument to be made for the cons of affirmative action. One of the cons pointed to is that it does not work and that it creates another imbalance, specifically for Asian Americans. Ethan Wang points out in the Los Angeles Times that while attendance for all minorities has increased, the admittance rate for Asians is lower than all others. Keeping in mind that Asians make up only 6% of the population in the U.S., however, at one point made up 25% of the Harvard admissions for a year. Also, affirmative action does not always regulate everything that needs to be. For example, it doesn't negate legacy admissions or donations of large sums of money, as pointed out by Professor Donarski, which is how a not insignificant amount of people got into Ivy League school where otherwise they would not. So the question becomes, does race really matter when you're rich enough to just get in anyway, or your parents already went to the school? It's worth noting that being Hispanic was not mentioned on either side of the arguments while researching this topic. It's also worth noting that there are no set quotas for admissions, such as admitting a certain number of black students in a given year. That's why there is not an exact number of races in any given year for any institution, public or private. Some questions I was going to ask, but cannot because there is no one here and I don't have an audience because I basically live alone, is having a diverse environment important? Why or why not? Is it fair to give higher values to one group over another for the sake of evening the playing field? And now that we as a society are more integrated than ever, should affirmative action in schools be abolished? In conclusion, the reality is changing a law to allow something doesn't make it automatically available. Just because you're allowed to go to Harvard doesn't mean you should or you can. I've spent my whole life benefiting from some type of affirmative action, but I personally would much rather be evaluated more holistically rather than being seen as a choice minority for a position that could otherwise go to somebody more qualified. As far as college admissions go, circumstances should be allowed to give context to a student's situations, such as if you had a 4.0 but nothing tragic happened, that's good, but if a student was able to maintain something like a 3.0 while being, for example, homeless, that should be given much more weight. If you were to do things like volunteer, that should also be taken into account. It shouldn't just be about race, but it shouldn't also be just about grades. It should be about everything. Thank you.